Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about chord progressions and in particular the best chords to follow on from chord 4. Now let's just be sure what we mean by chord 4 for a starter. First of all, if you see Roman numerals, you know you're talking about chords, so that's a useful pointer. We're going to work in C major for the purposes of this video. So the scale of C major goes like this: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If I number off those degrees of the scale, as we call them, first degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, fifth degree, sixth degree, seventh degree, back to the first degree. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. If I want to turn each of those into a chord, all I have to do is this. I use the bottom note as what we call the root, and then I add 3 notes above the root and 5 notes above the root. So if I've got C, well, 3 above that, C, D, E, and 5 above C, C, D, E, F, G. So I've got a root, a third, and a fifth. And that is what we call chord 1 in Roman numerals, because it's on the first degree of the scale, it's the C, and we have a root, a third, and a fifth. So if that's chord 1, chord 2 is DFA, chord 3 is EGB, chord 4, FAC, chord 5, GBD, chord 6, ACE, chord 7, BDF, and then we're back to chord 1 again. Now we have primary chords. Chords 1, 4 and 5 are primary chords. They're the ones that are used more often than anything else. And chord 4 then is one of these primary chords. So you might imagine there'll be a huge number of options from chord 4. Well, there are lots of options, but strangely enough, there are fewer really convincing options from chord 4 than there are from some of our secondary chords. So it's interesting that that's how it works. But 4 often has a kind of pull. It pulls you on to chord 1, or it pulls you on to chord 5, the other 2 primary chords. So quite often you've got something else and then you've got 4, 1 or 4, 5 or something. So it may well be that you'll be thinking about, well, actually, which are the chords that I'm going to put before the chord 4, and then move on to these progressions that we're going to talk about today. And this is not exhaustive. I mean, there are plenty of other options, but I'm just kind of thinking here about some of the more familiar options, so you're happy about those. So option 1 is perhaps the most obvious thing, where you have chord 4 followed by a chord 1. Now, just in case you're thinking, hang on a minute, you were playing 3 notes a minute ago, now you're playing 4 notes. Well, chord 4 is FAC, that's the triad. But if I want to have 4 parts, as I do here, all I'm doing is doubling up the F. So I can have as many parts as I like if I want to have a big chord like this, but it's all F, A, C, F, A, C, F. It's all the same triad, but I'm just doubling up notes. So you can have as many notes as you like, as long as they all belong to chord 4 in this case. So chord 4 followed by chord 1 is a very common move, and it's one of the cadences that we use at the ends of a phrase. So you can organize it like this, or you can have the parts slightly differently organized, or you can do what you like with it. That's absolutely fine. But 4-1 is a good kind of closing kind of progression. Okay, well, what else can we do? Option 2 is going 4 to 1, but then it's going on to 5. So I'm using the 3 primary chords. I'm going 4 to 1 to 5, and that's another strong progression. So 1 to 5 is a different kind of cadence from the 4 to 1 cadence we were talking about initially. But if you go 4 to 1 and then to 5, that's quite a nice way of approaching this other cadence. 4 to 1 to 5. Option 3 is to go from 4 to 2 to 5. How does that work? 4, 2 to 5. It's quite a nice progression because in chord 4, F and A are 2 of your notes. In chord 2, F and A are also two of your notes. So they're what we call common notes. They appear in the first chord and they appear in the second chord. And if you have common notes, especially if you repeat them in the same parts, they have a really kind of binding impact on the progression. So 4 to 2, with those two common notes being used in the same parts, and then on to 5, again makes for a strong progression. Okay, option number 4 is going from 4 to 2 to 6 this time. So 4 to 2 to 6. Now that doesn't sound so much like one of these cadence things. So it may be that in this instance, you'd be thinking about going on somewhere else. So you might have 4 to 2 to 6, and then 5 to 1. Something else might follow on from it. But it's a perfectly decent progression. Okay, option number 5 is 4 to 6 to 5. So what am I doing here? I'm going 4 to 6 to 5. So that's quite nice because again, you've got common notes, haven't you? A and C appear in both chord 4 and chord 6. So you can use those common notes again to take you from the first chord to the second chord. And then the next option, option 6, 4 to 7B to 1. Well, what am I doing here? Well, 7 is often a chord that people avoid. It's a diminished chord in a major key, so it can be a bit troublesome. But if you're going to use it, it usually works much better in first inversion. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's chord 7. It's the B, D, F. If I've got B as the bottom note, I say it's in root position. If I've got D as the bottom note, it's in first inversion. If I've got F as the bottom note, it's second inversion. And there are different ways of labeling this, but A means root position, B means first inversion, C means second inversion. And if you don't write a letter, you just assume it's A, which most of these are, of course. So I'm going to use 7B. So if I use chord 4 and then 7B and then 1, actually you can hear that's a rather nice progression, isn't it? 4 to 7B to 1. So I think actually it's quite a strong progression, even though there'll be people feeling nervous about using chord 7. Okay, and then option 7 is going from 4 to 6 to 2. So 4 to 6 to 2 sounds perfectly all right, but you might be thinking it doesn't sound very finished. Okay, doesn't have to, because it might be a phrase that's yet to be finished. So how about you do a little extension where you go 4 to 6 to 2 to 5 to 1. And then think, oh, that sounds quite complete, doesn't it? So sometimes these progressions are complete in themselves, or they sound like the end of something, because chord 4 is one of these cadence chords. Sometimes it sounds more like the beginning of something, or something that might be used mid-phrase that wants something else to complete the progression convincingly. Lots of other possibilities for using chord 4 in terms of context of progression, but I've just tried to highlight the most commonly used ones and to throw in one or two that are perhaps slightly less common, but nevertheless quite useful. You might well come up with others, that's absolutely fine. But these are just sort of 7 progressions that would really get you comfortable with where can I go from chord 4? And that might just be something that helps enhance your confidence with using chord progressions. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like to go to www.mmcourses.co.uk to discover more about what we can offer you at Music Matters, because apart from all the videos on our YouTube channel, there's a lot else on the website, including things like our online courses, where you can download a course and have lifetime access to it. Unlike these YouTube videos that are kind of one-offs, those courses are progressive courses that really take you from A to Z in a very logical musical study that will really advance your theory skills, your harmony skills, keyboard harmony skills, analysis skills, orchestration skills. Lots of different things going on there. So you might want to have a look at those courses and see if any of those work for you. You might also, while you're on the homepage, click on Maestros, and that will tell you about our very exciting Maestros group. We've got people from all over the world who are members of Maestros. It's a way of supporting the channel. It's a fun thing to do, some behind the scenes content, loyalty badges, emoji, all this kind of stuff. You get to choose some video topics if you want to. But also you can kind of come in at 3 different levels. And if you come in at level 2 or level 3, you can access our monthly live streams, a fantastic learning opportunity every month, lots of teaching content and opportunity to provide your own compositions for evaluation and feedback, recordings of your own performances, the chance to meet other musicians on the same kind of journey, lovely supportive group, early access to the YouTube videos. So many pluses there if you want to join Maestros. Anyway, you can read all about it at www.mmcourses.co.uk.